I'm gonna do this thing.
I'm watching.
Okay. Welcome, everybody, to our council meeting tonight. We're glad to have you all here. We're gonna go ahead and get started with an opening by Councilman Nolan Gunnell.
I choose to have my opening comments in the form of a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we come before thee this evening and we give thanks for the opportunity to assemble, and we're grateful for this form of government which we have. We pray that we will respect and honor this history of how we've been able to get this. We give thanks to those men and women who have served in the past and those who serve today to provide our freedom. Pray their blessings be upon them. We pray also upon those leaders of other nations in this nation that they will strive for freedom and peace, and that they will do their best to do this. We pray that we may act in accordance and do the things that we should this night. We give thanks for this opportunity to assemble here. And this I say and pray in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Now if you'll stand and join me in a pledge of allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Nolan.
Yep.
Okay, we need to have a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move to amend the agenda. Need to amend the resolution number in item 7D to say resolution 2025-07 instead of 6.
Okay.
And change the listed presenter on item 9A to be Andrew Erickson for the Cache County Policy Analyst. And Jairus couldn't make it today. And add an item under other business to be 10B to be listed as discussion on Utah Legislative Bill HB 256.
356.
356.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Okay, we will go on to the minutes. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 11th?
Move to approve the minutes of February 11th. I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That was unanimous as well. Okay, report of the county executive.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have one quick item. I met with our emergency manager in the past week, and we reviewed some of our emergency planning documents, and we're planning to make some updates and improvements to those. And we also talked about doing some updated training, including for elected officials. So just be aware, will be reaching out to schedule that at some point and just make sure everybody's up to date on their training. That concludes my report for this evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a really good idea. I spoke with Will about a year ago and thought, if there's an emergency, what is our role? We need to understand what we should do. So
Yeah, and that's exactly what the training's about.
yeah, get that taken care of. Okay, items of special interest, Bear River Mental Health Audit Report. Rob?
Thank you. I have some hard copies. Would anyone like a hard copy?
Something to look at while you're telling us about
Yeah,
it, right?
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Fantastic, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
I'm Rob Johnson, the Director of Financial Affairs at Bear Mental Health, and part of state code says that each year, someone from the mental health center is supposed to come and present the audit and allow questions for the local mental health authority, which is the Cache County Council. And then I also have a certificate to sign that says that that has happened. If you'll turn to page 5, where the auditor's opinion is. In the second paragraph there, they state, in our opinion, the accompanying financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of Bear River Mental Health Services, Inc., as of June 30, 24 and 23, and the changes in its net assets and cash flows for the years then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So it was a clean opinion. And if you'll skip over to page 8, this is the statement of financial position or the balance sheet. You can see that total assets as of June 30th, 2024 were just over 19.9 million. Down there in the middle of that, kind of right in the middle of the page, you can see the unexpended county funds. So we're on different budget years, and so if you ever put more in your budget than we need to make the 20% match with the state, we put it on our balance sheet and use it in years when you maybe, where we didn't ask for enough, and then there's some excess. So of that $63,168, $19,551 of that is cash counties, unexpended county funds on our books. If we switched over to the next page, the statement of activities or the income statement, you can see the third number there from the bottom under the 2024 column. Our net income was $934,817 for that fiscal year. You can see the third number from the top, the county. I like to talk about this funding, our funding stream, as an inverted pyramid, where the county funds are at the bottom. And the state funds require that 20% county match. And then we take those county and state funds and match the Medicaid dollars with them to draw down. So that $546,000 from the 3 counties really is the basis of our budget. Those dollars are key to bringing down the rest of the dollars. That almost $18 million in revenue is based on that $546,000 county match. So thank you very much for your support over the years for the mental health system. If we switch to page 10, this is the statement of functional expenses, breaks out the expenditures. You can see we are a service organization, and the majority of our expenditures are in personnel to pay for our providers and the other people that work for Bear Mental Health. And then let's switch back to page 25. This is a report on internal control over financial reporting and compliance that the auditors are required to do. Right down at the bottom, that last sentence on page 25, during our audit, we did not identify any deficiencies in internal control that we consider to be a material weakness. And then if we switch over to the next page, on page 26, the results of our tests disclose no instances of non-compliance or other matters that are required to be reported under governmental auditing standards. Any questions from the council?
Does anyone have a question?
The frequency of Carver, Floric, and James, how many times have they audited you?
This is their 6th year.
Do you rotate them?
We do go out to bid every so often. There's been some issues with Medicaid's new PRISM system. You've maybe heard about that, and we haven't been able to get good eligible numbers. So we've been with them for this 6th year, and I think our board wants to go with them with one more year, and then we'll probably go out to bid again.
Thank you.
Can you give us an update on your receiving center, and how that's progressing? I know that's not a financial statement issue, but.
Yeah, so I think that the architect says it's going to be ready to go out to bid on April 1st. So I think it'll go out to the contractors for bid on the 1st of April, or thereabouts.
Great, we look forward to that. Anybody else? Rob, thank you so much, and thanks for what you guys do.
Just one last thing, we did send our addendum for the contract over, which all it does is change the amount of money, that 20%, and haven't seen that back, so we're looking for that. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Next on our agenda is a report from the Trails Division. Landis?
So I'm Landis. I'm the Regional Trails and Active Transportation Coordinator for the county. I've got some slides to share with you. There's a lot of information on these. My presentation report will be really quick, but we will make sure you all get a copy of these slides. There's a bunch of links in them. So if you have any questions, anything specifically we don't have time for tonight, you can, on your own time, go and learn more. And please ask me any questions tonight or whenever, if you have any other questions. So first, we can jump in. I wanted to give an update on some things now that we've started 2025, some big things that happened last year. So here's a list of all the grants we successfully retained in 2024. You can see the number there at the bottom. The total's almost $5 million. The bulk of that is from those first two grants. These are two new state programs, the Outdoor Recreation Initiative and the Utah Trail Network. These are two big grants from the state where they are willing to pay up to 100% of construction cost. All they require is that the locals get the projects to the point where they're shovel ready. So that means things like feasibility studies, alignment studies, preliminary engineering, so we can hand off these projects, and the state has allocated big buckets of money to put towards building these bigger regional projects. So this was the second year for both of those projects. So these were big wins for us to get ahead of and bring some of those state tax dollars back to our county. And then a bunch of their ongoing projects as well.
Can you go back a slide?
Yeah.
Will you tell us where each of those are at?
Yes. So I have more slides later for most of these
Pictures?
with pictures,
Oh,
yes.
good. Well, I'll be patient then, thanks.
Let me just make sure. The Watercrest one I actually just finished. I don't have a picture for that yet, but that just opened up in December. It's a mile of Bonneville Shoreline Trail in North Logan. And the temporary bike lanes, we're going to do our first temporary bike lanes. We did a pilot 2 years ago now, but now since we got the money and ordered the cones and stuff, we're going to do our first full launch of those this bike week, so in May. So this, I just want to show that this is $5 million almost, is the biggest year forever for our division, and kind of by a lot. And so this is some of the previous years, not our first time to break $1 million in grants for one year, but first to do it by a good bit. And again, a lot of that is from these new state funding sources that we positioned ourselves to be ready to go after, which puts us ahead of the pack for bringing those state tax dollars back to our people. You can go to the next slide. This just breaks down. Just for context, we get money from these different local organizations. So we get a bunch of money from RAPS, and then we get some money from the CMPO, Cache County, and a bunch of cities within the county. This kind of is our overhead, our operating budget. You can go to the next slide, and this shows all the money we were working with in 2024. So that piece that we get from local jurisdictions to keep the lights on and keep things moving is less than 5% of all the money we had in our budget last year, because so much of it came from those grants. Next one. And this, another way of showing it, this is, again, 2024, potentially an outlier. We can't go after those big money every single year because we got to actually get things built. But it was our biggest return on investment yet. But you can see over the 5-year trend, our return on investment is still really, really high for this division. And we're able to turn around and get that money spent, which we'll talk about at the end. Okay. So just shout out a couple of the ways we're able to do this. First is this is the most staffed our division has been. We have 2 full-time employees, and it's in the past it started out as just 1, and then it went up to 1.5, and now we're at 2. And so this is double the amount of grants we can write in a year from where we were, and that has been a huge part of getting so much money to come in. Second, the state is changing, and we've been able to adapt really quickly to take advantage of those changes at the state level. And third, we have made it a point to prioritize bigger regional projects where we can collaborate with partners such as other cities, local nonprofits, the Forest Service, other groups like that, to make our money go further and bring more benefit to our residents. So all that, I hope all of you know, we are ramping up to do a master plan update to our Trails and Active Transportation Master Plan. There's two big pushes for this. One is our cities have, since this was adopted 6-7 years ago, a lot of our cities have made their own master plans, and we just want to make sure that our efforts are matching what they want. And two, with all the changes we've seen from the state, we want to make sure that we've seen some success this past year in getting these new grant sources to come our way. We want to institutionalize that, get feedback from the public to make sure they're happy with the direction we're going, and feedback from elected officials here and from our cities to make sure that they're happy with this new direction to get more money to come our way. And then besides just grants and projects, we also help the Forest Service and the Cache Trails Alliance with their Adopt a Trail program, helping to manage volunteers for that. So there's some numbers from that. And the next slide shows some of the events we do to promote trails and active transportation throughout the county. So these are just some of our biggest events from the past year that we supported or ran, to give you a sense of some other things that we're working on all the time. Okay. I also wanted to step back and show kind of the why the state's prioritizing all this money, and the big picture of what we're a part of. So hopefully you've heard, but the state Department of Natural Resources loves to share the fact that outdoor recreation is the biggest growing sector within Utah's economy. You can see just from 2022 to 2023, there was over $1 billion increase in spending that happened within our state. It creates a bunch of jobs, and yeah, Cache County has the resources and ability to stay on the front edge of that. Next slide. And then specifically, that's for everything from skiing, boating, hunting, everything. But for trails, there is a growing amount of research that shows how trails specifically benefit local economies, specifically promoting local small businesses, creating local jobs and good paying jobs, and tourism, putting dollars back into our community. So that's a lot. Again, there's links in all those slides if you would like more information, or I'm happy to sit down and talk whenever. But here's, like I said, last year is a big year for bringing money in. This is going to be a big year for getting money spent and building things for our community. So you can go to the next one. First and most anticipated probably is the Deep Canyon Trailhead. This has been a project we've been working on for a while, but we have it contracted for construction. Just need to wait for the weather to get nice, and we'll get this thing built. Next one. So this is, we just got one of those first grants. We got over $500,000 to come to build 2 miles of trail of the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. This will connect Hyde Park up to Smithfield. This will be the first time Smithfield's been connected to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. So they're really excited. We're really excited. And yeah, that should go into construction this summer as well. And this is a trail we're working with UDOT on. The goal is to connect the Logan Trail system to the Nibley Trail system. This will be phase 2. It was looking like it'll be 3 phases. But this is a complicated project, so it'll be a good next win on getting this thing done. And then we have lots of other ongoing projects all the time, but some ones I wanted to highlight are first, Blacksmith Fork Trail. So this is the other big chunk, the $4 million we got from UDOT on the Utah Trail Network. They're going to come in and put in this almost 2 miles of trail on the Blacksmith Fork, connecting Ridgeline High School to the Black Hawk Apartments and Soccer Complex. Again, tying another connection from Nibley to Logan, and along a beautiful river corridor. We're working with landowners right now to finalize the agreements for this. It's Blackstone and Mayor Alder, people we've been working with, and they're both been great partners on this one. Cache Bikeway, this has been in the works for a while. We're going to start painting this year, but given chip seal schedules and stuff, we're anticipating it'll take a couple of years to get this all done, but hopefully we'll start seeing some of this work happening this year. And then our Trail Etiquette campaign, we launched last year, but we're going to keep rolling it out. We're going to expand to a bunch of new cities and new trails this year. This is again less on the shovels in the ground side and more in the building a community and understanding of these resources and how to take care of each other when we're out enjoying ourselves. I also just dropped in some slides from our trail counters to show you. You can just flip through these, but it's kind of small, but you can see that 2024 is at the top or near the top. For years we've been counting, and that one is my favorite. There's a couple that show this, but 2020, as we all know, was a huge year for people getting outside where they could safely and recreating. And our ranger district here, their projection was what we saw in 2020 is probably what we would start seeing in 2030. That was a guess that we wouldn't get back to those numbers based on projected growth in our county until 2030. Well, a lot of our most popular trails hit those numbers again in 2024. So demand for these trails is increasing faster than even us experts thought. So we need to keep building more trails for our residents. And that's what I got. Thanks for the time.
Anybody have any questions for Landis?
I do about Deep Canyon.
Yeah.
A lot of people are going to ask if Wayne's Loop will be accessible. Are you prepared to answer that question?
Accessible, how so?
If what will be accessible?
Wayne's Loop. So when you're hiking up to the Wellsvilles, you go to the left about a mile in.
Reopened?
Yeah, for biking and
Yes.
hiking.
Yeah, so that's the condition on reopening Wayne's Loop is having adequate parking, and this trailhead will get us there. So then we'll meet all the conditions on the permit to reopen Wayne's Loop.
I think a lot of people will be pleased to hear that.
It's a good trail. It's been a shame.
This question might be kind of hard to answer, but what is the greatest use of our trails? Would you say it's mostly like foot traffic or biking or?
We don't break down that. Our counters are just infrared, so they're not intrusive. So it's just anything that breaks the beam counts. We've had some bike counters up here that track for metal, so that would help us distinguish, but we don't have a robust system for that.
Okay.
Landis, I have a question about the master plan, and I don't know if you can answer this, but at one point we had a project that came to us, and there was a landowner who, there was the dispute, there was a trail in the master plan that went across his property, and he claimed he didn't know anything about it. And I don't know how, when you guys do your master plan, do you go across private property? Is it like, this is what we'd like to do, and we don't really
Yeah.
check with the landowners, or how does that work?
We make it all public. There's opportunity all along the process for people to give feedback, but we can't talk to everyone in the county. And so we make it very clear in the beginning that, the state doesn't allow us to use eminent domains. That's just not even part of the conversation. So these are just alignments, preferred alignments, but all contingent on what local jurisdictions want, changes and potential other plans, and then, of course, landowner buy-in and support for the project.
Thank you.
So in the development of lands, is that master plan then used as leverage in order to approve developments?
I can't speak to development stuff, but it is whenever a project comes across my desk, there's a trail in the master plan on it, I flag it and try to get involved in those meetings. Again, just to say like, hey, this is something that the county has identified as a potential benefit. How do you feel about it? And then go from there. Yeah, and then it's up to the landowners if they want to participate or not, and if not, then we go and try to find the next best alignment and try to keep that project alive.
The municipalities have a little bit more leverage that they're able to use, I think, with than we are.
Some municipalities have used trails or development as a way to get trails to come in, giving you their benefits in density, bonuses, or other means to get trails to come in as development comes in.
Could you go back to, just because this, go back to the Blacksmith Fork
Yeah.
trail on your graphic? So this was before us because, we have approved some of our open space funding to do the conservation on the land right there. That trail then, what's it look like going adjacent to the highway?
So we've been working with UDOT on it. UDOT's project manager since this is their funding for
Yeah.
this trail. But they're gonna add a turning lane on that highway, so the highway's gonna actually get a little bit wider. And we're still gonna have, I think, 7 feet of grass or gravel and then the trail.
Will be
That's all gonna
separated.
fit within UDOT's right away.
And then that piece that goes west to go to the, back to the river?
That'll be on Blackstone. Blackstone has bought that parcel
Blackstone.
recently to expand their
Past
campus.
the Loma?
Yeah. mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Past
it'll
the Loma
go,
property.
it'll go down Blackstones to reach the Alder Farms on the other side.
Okay, okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, Landis, thank you so much, and thanks for what you guys
Thank
do.
you.
Yeah. Okay, it's close enough to 5:30 that we can set public hearings. Okay, I would entertain a motion to set the public hearings that are on our agenda.
Well, I'd move to set the public hearing of, for March 11th, 2025, ordinance 2025-08, the Funk Richmond Gravel Pit Property Rezone, ordinance 2025-09, the Willits RU5 Rezone, and on March 11th, ordinance 2025-10, Gainey Subdivision Rezone.
There's one on the back, too.
And resolution 2025-07, right? In opening the 2025 budget.
Okay, do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded that we set those public hearings for March 11th. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. All right, pending action, we have ordinance 2025-03. Dirk, are you going to present us on that?
You bet. Andrew, if you would take one down and pass it around, it'd be great. So before you for pending action is the vote on the rezone of the, for Powder Mountain. And we've talked about this over the last month or so here, as well as in a joint meeting between the Planning Commission and the council. And I'm not going to have as good of an introduction and overview as Angie has already given in the past, other than just to share that Brooke from Powder Mountain shared this overview letter last week with me, and I just shared it with you by email today and by hard copy now, and I apologize for that. We had some family issues come up last week, and to give you an overview of the letter, though, it's really an overview of the process and what they're asking for. And really, Andrew Crane and I have been working together. We also had a meeting that I asked to set between a couple of members of the council, a couple of members of the Planning Commission. It was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I just wanted to update everyone and to make sure that we reach out to the council and to the Planning Commission to get as much information and questions as we could get. Long story short, the Planning Commission has recommended approval of the rezone, and I would say my perspective and what we've talked about as a staff and through this whole process is that our own county code asks that in the case that we're going to have a resort recreation zone master plan come to the county, which is what is being expected and what is part of the plan, that a rezone occurs first. And I think we've really, as a staff, kind of come to the conclusion that I just said come to a conclusion, but one insight into that is that if you have the entire zone rezoned that we want them to rezone, that goes into that master plan, then moving forward, the development services staff and the whole process doesn't have to be disjointed. That you're dealing with and you already have everything in front of you that Powder Mountain, for instance, would want to talk about and discuss. The next step in that plan after getting the rezone is to receive, have the applicant create, have us receive and fully analyze a master plan for that resort recreation zone. And that is the point where I talked to Andrew Crane and we discussed, would the county still have the tools to help Powder Mountain I'm sure this isn't a phrase I'll be able to coin, but to develop responsibly. In other words, would we still have the ability to have a say in how they develop and help them and help the county and to meet our needs and concerns? And between Andrew Crane and I, and working with our development services staff, we have looked at our code and analyzed that code and found that in that code, it's both broad enough and specific enough that we would have what we need to, what I call, draw the line in the sand when it comes to approving a master plan, reviewing and approving a master plan, to where it could be approved with conditions. And the line in the sand where that's drawn would include two things. One is, what does approving the master plan mean as far as what they're allowed to do? And then also, what does approving that master plan mean as far as when do they need to come back and talk to us about a number of things, including future changes to the master plan, but most importantly, I think to the interest of this discussion tonight, would be they would still have to come and get their developments approved. They would still go through a conditional use process. They would still go through the zoning processes, sorry, not zoning processes, but the development processes that we have in our county to help them make sure that everything's in line. We have a great opportunity as part of reviewing and approving that master plan to help them and to make sure that we meet the needs of the county and the concerns, any concerns that the county council members would have or planning commission members have or citizens. So with that, the planning commission has recommended approval and it's to you for your vote. I'm here, Angie's here, Brooke Hans is also here from Powder Mountain if you have any questions as part of this discussion tonight.
Dirk, does
I
anybody?
do have some questions.
Okay, perfect. Do you want to go to Dirk? Is that perfect?
So, in your presentation, you talked about code, but we do have the code that allows us to do three things as a council: accept, reject, or modify. So just making sure that we're all aware of that, because you didn't touch on that. And then I suspect every council member here has been inundated with emails. It seemed like it was a form email, but did the Development Services Office do anything to find out the examples or anything from any of those emails that came in who had concerns with this development?
Did we get such emails, Angie?
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit because I did call a few of them back, the ones that left the phone number. And I asked specifically to check the legality. I reached out to Angie as well as Andrew to ask about specific things mentioned in the email, namely requiring an easement or publicly accessible area. That was a question that came up in the email. The answer I received from Andrew and Angie was that that's not really part of the zoning process typically. It's more part of the development process. And feel free to correct me if I'm misstating any information. Another question was, can we make it affordable for residents in the area? That's one that we don't have, as I understand it, legal jurisdiction over. We can kindly request that from the organization, but that's not something that's within the legal bounds. And then the other thing mentioned in the email was to outline specific ways that profits from the resort would be reinvested into the local economy, which components of that were contained in Brooke's presentation about the lodging tax and stuff. So I think we have a rough idea on the benefit, at least to the funds. But that's what I got out of those emails and feedback from our folks, which I appreciate the timely response and taking the time to explain that to me. So if anyone has questions for me about that, I could answer that too.
I'd like to talk about the emails that I got was like Nolan said, it was a canned email, but I've had many of them. But one of the problems that apparently that they're concerned about is that, and I'll just read what it says, Powder Mountain has a well-documented history of failing to adhere to legal and planning requirements in both Weber and Cache counties. Past development agreements have been violated, and commitments made in rezoning applications have been disregarded. In Weber County, Powder Mountain failed to fulfill its obligations under the 2015 development agreement, particularly regarding public access and recreational amenities. Similar concerns apply to their operations in Cache County, where they continue to push forward private developments without clear transparency about their long-term objectives. And so can we have an answer to that, or has there been any studies made on any of that we could know what the real issue is on this?
I can speak to that a little bit, Barbara. I spoke to Commissioner Harvey from Weber County about that, and he said up until just a few years ago, that was the case. They did have a history of things not happening the way they should, and commitments that were made that were not fulfilled. However, with the current ownership of Powder Mountain, he said that all of those concerns have been taken care of. They came in immediately, paid any back taxes or fees or fines, anything that was owed. They wrote a check, brought it current, and in his estimation, I just got one opinion from Weber County, but he said that they are very open to concerns that Weber County brings to them, and that in the developments that he has seen, they were very concerned about environmental impacts, and he felt very positive about what they had planned and what it would mean for both of our counties. So that was a conversation that I had that is current.
Okay.
And I'll just tell you, when I get emails that are the same email from a million different people, I delete them. I learned from Senator Hilliard. If you can't write me a personal note, I'm not gonna listen to you, so.
Well, I think it deserves listening to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, that's, I'm glad you did. And I'm glad Keegan made some phone calls. I looked at them and saw they were out of the state and thought,
I will speak to that point that most, I don't know if most were out of the state, but I don't know that any residents were in, or any of them were Cache County residents, based on the ones I called where they said they were from in the email and so forth. But yeah.
And given that we all got those emails, I believe, and they were all basically a form letter with some personalization, but ultimately the concerns that were raised there, and I appreciate the feedback that you just shared, Chairwoman Goodlander, but in addition to that, most of it seemed like enforcement things that we are in control of, that can be addressed by our process, procedure, et cetera. So having the feedback from a current commissioner in our neighboring county helps me feel even more confident about that.
I do want to speak to the pricing and affordability component that was mentioned, because I think it's helpful to talk in specifics of what affordable means and how Powder Mountain's lift ticket prices compare to those in northern Utah. I'm a skier, so I'm personally interested in this. I did some digging, and over the weekend I checked just to see how much it would be to ski at different resorts next Saturday, or this Saturday, I guess, that's the first. Our local ones, Cherry Peak is $55 for a day lift ticket. Nordic Valley, they fluctuate, but this Saturday was $59. Beaver Mountain, $70. Powder Mountain is $234. So there were only two that were more expensive than Powder Mountain, which is Park City and Deer Valley. So when the residents or people in the area say that the price has gone up since the acquisition, there's some data associated with that.
Okay, anybody else have something they want to contribute, or do we want to, is anyone ready to make a motion on this, on the rezone that's in front of us? We've had a long, several weeks to look at it and to find out more information. I did check with Andrew as well, our attorney, that said that he felt pretty confident that we would, by doing this rezone, we are not giving up. There still would be plans that come to us, that it's not, that it's going to lose the control. It does change the zone and what's allowed, like that is true. But he felt pretty confident that we could still have a say.
I have a question for Dirk, because I think that the developing area was about 90 acres or something that's in the, I don't remember the number. Do we have that? 95?
I would say around 95.
So just so we all understand, what are the repercussions to the, master plan and stuff? Were we to modify today and say we'll approve 95 acres as an RR? Just so
Right.
we know, eyes wide open.
Right. I'd say first off, you do, and that's Andrew. My email to Andrew to the council was, Andrew, please help clarify what the council's options are. And absolutely, just because the first step is rezone the desired areas, that doesn't mean that you don't have a choice in how that goes. However, I would say the repercussion to the reason the code was written was so that we can handle it together, I would say, as a plan. So in my mind, in the areas that are up for proposed rezone tonight, that aren't in the development area, the development that they've proposed to do are basically trails. And so they would have to come to us for, under the FR40, to develop those trails. We could have Angie come and speak to you if you'd like about the potential differences in how that would be handled. I would actually be kind of, I haven't done the analysis, but I'm thinking it would be interesting to see a development process for FR40, which is pretty much the same purpose as what they're asking to rezone. So I haven't done the analysis. I'm not saying that I'm falling on one side or the other or trying to tell you what to do, so to say, but I'm not seeing necessarily the wisdom in not rezoning that other part, especially since that other part is pretty much not suitable to development. It's really steep slopes, which is why they have, when we think of development and we think of homes and business district or a ski resort type area, that valley over on the eastern side is really the only place where it would be suitable to do. However, repercussions, my understanding is that what they gain in asking for this 1,600 rezone is about 41 equivalent density units difference. Now, if we just rezoned tonight the around 100, I'm not sure how that would change the equation, but in and of itself on a project of this scale, I'm not sure that would affect dramatically the number of density units that they would gain or lose. What I wanted to slow it down, basically for the opportunity to gain public input and to allow the council and the planning commission, if they wanted to get more questions or have more opportunities for questions that were substantive. And as of last Tuesday afternoon, I hadn't received any other than this option, asking about the option of, well, can we only rezone part of it? And the short answer is yes. You have the ability as a council to do that. I'm just not sure really what it substantively gains us in power, because the main part of where they want to develop is in that, the 100 acres.
Yeah.
In fact, it may, I don't know how, but it just having it being a disjointed effort to me doesn't make a lot of sense, which is why I'm thinking that the council and the county created this type of zoning process before. So I don't know if, Angie, if you have anything to say about the repercussions and I'm sure Brooke would love to share some insight into that if the chair and the council so would like Brooke's input on that specific question.
I have another question, if I may.
Yeah, please.
So how far do we get into the master plan that you've talked about before we really sit down and have a heart-to-heart talk with the other county on what it's going to cost us to have them supply with emergency services and stuff? Brooke gave us an idea of what the taxes were, but nobody's given me an idea of the cost of where that delineates or takes away from what we're gonna get in the taxes, because I really think that's an important part for me as a council member to understand that we're going down this path of having a master plan or a resort, and kudos for that, but I want to know the cost and the infrastructure or how that's going to come across. Just before we get down there and say, okay, here's a master plan, you're stuck with what's going to be costing us.
Yeah, water and sewage too, probably.
Right.
So where does that come in on this? You know, can you give me a calendar, a timetable, or anything on that?
That definitely comes in my mind during the master plan process. We haven't reached that level yet. We've met with JUB a couple of times and we've talked about analyzing it. And Brooke herself could attest to the fact that we've got at least one staff member on the JUB staff that is going to be really good at looking at the details. And because she's been through it before in developing resorts. And quite frankly, I will say in this public meeting, helping us hold Powder Mountain's feet to the fire on any number of issues. On the fiscal summary or fiscal analysis itself, it would have, that I don't have those answers now, obviously. But I'm not thinking that that our analysis of this master plan is going to take more than a few months. But it'll take us as long as we need it to take. Because those are the sorts of answers that we're going to look into and get before we recommend it to the Planning Commission for any sort of, approval or whatever our recommendation is.
When you mentioned trails being in the FR40, don't we already have a bunch of trails in the FR40 that our citizens are using?
Yeah.
So
I just don't know if these trails are existent and you would plan on developing them or not.
You have no trails on the, public trails on the.
Over there in this area, there aren't any public trails. Yeah. Did I answer your question, though? Because you kind of asked for a timeline.
I did.
I just know that I wanted to make sure that we had a chance. Brooke came and said, listen, you guys are taking a bit to look at this. And I said, yes, we are. And what are your real concerns? And that's why we talked to them about helping them go through the development plan process on a couple of their projects for the summer. And in a way, in my mind, that actually bought us some release time, or release of pressure time, where they can take it easy a little bit on us on reviewing their master plan and giving us time to really dig into it, but we can still help them with a couple of the smaller development issues that they have at the top of their list. And so that's why I felt really a lot more comfortable with heading into the master plan process, because I want to dig into that. I want to make sure that we have all of the questions about services provided answered, about all the questions about costs. And in my mind, everything that's being done over there should kind of pay for itself on the services that we need to offer, right? And make sure that it makes sense fiscally what they're doing. And we're going to take the amount of time it takes, but I don't think more than several months it's going to take that. But we do have that release valve that we were able to pull on the pressure by considering their smaller development plans for this summer.
The approval of the master plan is by planning and zoning?
It goes to the Planning Commission. We had a discussion this afternoon with your chair and vice chair and talked to the fact that with the master plan process in our code, that can be approved with conditions. Yes, the primary analysis arm of that is your planning and zoning, your development services department. While Angie has been made the interim director of development services, I have made it clear to both Powder Mountain and to Angie that I pulled back from really managing all of the development services, but on Powder Mountain I'm going to stay there, because it's important that we have a careful eye and have someone there that's done a lot of government analysis to be able to watch over that and make sure we're communicating clearly. My goal in that is that this group here will be able to share all the concerns and thoughts that they please, and that we will listen to those and be able to direct and guide our analysis with any of those concerns. Really, we are the analysis arm, But in a lot of ways, this body, as well as the Planning Commission, are the listening ears to the citizens. And you will hear things that we won't hear because you're out there and your people know to contact you, the citizens. So yes, the answer to your question is yes. It's Development Services that does the analysis, and that master plan goes.
Long answer to my question, and my second part of that is so it does not come back to us for us to look at it, right?
The master plan?
We have no option at that point to shave it back, change, or anything like that as a council, right?
The master plan?
Right.
Absolutely, you have the option. You have your influence. Absolutely. Does it come to you for a vote? No. By your code, it does not. Yeah.
You're saying like just working with our planning commission, working
Oh,
in
yeah.
conjunction with them?
Yeah.
Okay. But
Yeah.
not as a vote to a council, to a body.
Because this is such a big project and affects so much of our county just by the very means of the scale of the project, the communication has to be at the top level. It can't be from us just off doing our analysis for 3 or 4 months and you never hearing about it. This will be the idea. We've got Nolan that we will keep updated as our liaison. We've got our chair and vice chair that, and any of you really that have questions can come to us and get in and ask about things.
I mean, I'm all for property rights and everything else, but this is a scope of significant size that I don't even know if we've even asked all the right questions yet for the master plan when it deals with 2 counties and everything else that's going to be going on there as far as fire and emergency services. And so I just want to make sure we're taking that step properly and carefully. And so, and that's why I just think timetable would help me understand, did we connect this before we went over to here? Did we do this one before we got to this point? I'm just concerned about that.
I can tell you for sure that our county code doesn't even allow us to look at their master plan until we get the rezone done. And to the benefit and credit of Powder Mountain and Stephen, they provided it up front so that we could help think about that and see the future. There are other counties that do their development of these resort zones concurrently, where they do the rezoning and the master plan in a concurrent format. If we did it that way, we literally would be breaking our own code. So that's why the rezone is before you. And it may seem pretty daunting, but in effect, the rezone question itself is actually fairly straightforward. It's not simple, but it's straightforward, and which is why I think the Planning Commission approved it or recommended it for approval. The questions you're asking, by the way, are all good, and they're necessary, and they need to be part of the master plan analysis, really. That's where we'll have the opportunity to sink our teeth in and help them develop the way we want them to
I
develop.
was here with the planning commission when they rezoned it, but I don't recall any talk about part of it being rezoned or anything else that way. I don't even know if that was even presented as an option. See what I mean?
My understanding
Sure.
was that the entire, the proponent one wasn't necessarily seeking the full acreage, but that was a recommendation from us to them. But I still don't understand, the answer, I guess, is still unsatisfactory to me of, well, we're gonna start with 100, but they probably won't use the other 1,500, but go ahead and approve that, because it probably won't get used anyway. Like, that's how I understand it, which may not be accurate, but I don't, that feels uncomfortable.
I actually would feel more comfortable with them rezoning the entire bit, because if they don't rezone that other, let's just say the western 2/3 of what is being proposed to be rezoned, that could be developed under a totally separate line and approach. Instead, if we rezone the entire area that they're proposing, we then have the ability to say, oh, you just want trails over there. Great. That's all we're approving you for. And if you want to do more, you would have to go through a master plan amendment process, and we have the ability to say no to that.
Okay, So even if they want to build something that is permissible in the zone, we can still deny that
Yeah.
development.
This master plan process is a process, honestly, that is, in my mind, intended to actually have a more cohesive development plan instead of having it be, yeah.
Okay, then go back to Councilman Erickson's question of, will this ever come back? So back to what Keegan's talking about, will we have the ability to talk about that? That ability lies with the planning and zoning then.
Well, the final decision does, but our ability to give input is there. We could do a workshop if, you know,
See, there's my
that's-
point. Where do we get that ability and where does that come in from there? Is that built into that master plan or what?
Built into the master plan on when they communicate with the council.
How much input the council's gonna have? Or are we just gonna say, okay, we sit in the planning and zoning and make sure what's going on from that point?
You know what,
Yeah.
we could talk to Dirk. We could say, Dirk, will you please, as you have received something from JUB Engineering that you feel comfortable with, will you present at least the first part of it to us, or the second part as you, so that we can say then, this is a concern of ours. I think they're open. I think the Development Services and the Planning Commission is open to as much input as we want to give. We have to set that. Like, are we willing to, do we want to set up a workshop? Do we want to say, please present to us this information about the master plan? I think we can still have that input. We just don't get the final vote.
Right.
But I think Dirk is saying they would welcome as much input as we want to give them, is what I'm hearing.
And we're willing to commit to actually a regular update, like a biweekly update of anyone who wants to come, 3 at a time, of course, on the council or via email or something like that, where we're giving you an update on what we've accomplished in the last couple of weeks, what it means. I keep talking about drawing these lines in the sand, and what that means is how detailed do we want to get in when they have to come ask for permission to change. And those lines in the sand, they also say exactly when they have to come they will be submitting development plans to us on each of the parts of their development. And we get to talk about in the master plan with conditions what that means or what might be required at that time, that kind of thing. The master plan itself is a big plan, but we can sink some teeth into it via conditions.
And I don't want to get caught up in the master plan process. We need to make a decision about the zoning and, you know, that, I know they're connected. I understand that, but I think we need to concentrate.
I had one more point. I was waiting for that line to kind of come to the conclusion before I brought it up. So sorry that it's kind of like stepping back from what you just said and advancing it. And I can't remember from the past meeting, but it might have been stated when, in fact, we would begin the conversation about the interlocal agreement with Weber County. Because to me, that is the part of most concern, is just resolving that, because it, as was mentioned, it is a huge part of this. Is there maybe to restate a question that was already asked, where in the process will we begin the interlocal agreement discussion with Weber County?
As soon as the rezone is done, per our own code, when the rezone is done, we can begin analyzing the master plan. I mean, have we looked at it? Yeah. Have we started talking to JUB about it? Yeah. And honestly, the real answer is immediately. We don't have to wait for that. Even to the point where our chair was willing to reach out, and that is a first step. But I'm actually not worried. I want to make sure we get on all of those discussions immediately, because that also is actually, I think those decisions are made on our side of the hill as well, when it comes to fire service, let's say. And all of the services must be provided, but we have a say in how they will be provided.
Yeah, and so the approval of any interlocal agreement, that portion of this whole process would have to come to this body, correct?
Interlocal agreement
I would think it should, yeah.
If,
Depends. If it's between the fire district, then it'll go through the fire district board.
Yeah.
Right.
If it's something that has to do with law enforcement, maybe, but I don't know if that's anticipated. But, so everything with the fire is gonna be handled by the fire district.
Right, so maybe step forward from whatever happens tonight is clear understanding of what that next step looks like. Important.
That interlocal agreement will
Yep.
be very, very important. Commissioner Harvey and I talked about that a little bit too, that I don't know at what point will trigger that, but it obviously is on that horizon. Okay, does anyone else have questions for Dirk? And would anyone like to hear from Brooke? Would you have any questions that you'd like to ask Brooke?
I know a lot of those letters that we received that talked about private, public use and all this private ground. I thought that was a moot point. I will not be in any favor of saying we're gonna require all this public access to private ground. I'm not very much in favor of that. And I'm not, that might be siding with Powder Mountain, but I just sit there, I'm very adamant that we don't use a lot of that for big leverage for them to develop, so.
Anybody else have something they want to ask or talk about?
I think I'll just mention the number of emails. I think last time I counted, they're still coming in when I restarted the meeting, but I counted 23 opposed and 1 in favor.
I just want to add, maybe if I could add a little perspective. This rezone is a pretty small portion of the land out there. What's the total acreage? 5,200 acres, and this rezone is how many acres?
1,600.
Okay, it's a small portion that's being added. It's already, all of the complexities that you're concerned about, which are good. I think it's good that, that you're considering these things and you want to make sure we do a good job addressing them. They're all things we're going to have to deal with one way or the other. Whether this rezone goes through or not, they still have thousands of acres that they're developing, and most of that development is going to happen on the stuff they already have. So this rezone today doesn't change that. We're still going to have the largest ski resort in the country, in our county, being developed. And whether a portion of it is in one zoning or another, I think only complicates our management of that. We're still going to have to manage it. We're still going to have to work with them on public safety. We're still going to have to deal with whatever other issues come up on the existing development that is going to happen, that has happened. There's a resort there already, and the additional development that is planned is going to happen. This is a small piece, and the reason why our previous development services director proposed that they rezone it was to simplify our approach to it, so that we could handle all of their land the same way. And how we do that is still up to us, and we're going to do that. But we're going to do that whether this rezone happens or not. We need to. So the reason why staff recommended this was to make it easier on our staff, so that we only have one set of rules that governs everything, versus having things under 2 different sets of rules. So I understand that they might be frustrated that we ask them to do something and then they bring it to us and then we have all these questions. But that's your job. That's your job, is to ask these questions. These are good questions that you're asking, and they're all things that we will address.
I think the biggest clarification is it can be a ski resort. It's just that the resort would allow them to create, residential and rental units that would change the dynamic. And I think that's what we're looking at here. And I think in the context of ski resorts in the country, like we just saw, which I think is relevant to this discussion, the Vail Resorts, Park City Lyft employees strike because they made a claim that they can't even live in the area nearby where they are trying to do their job because it's become unaffordable. So that is a potential outcome of approving this zone, which is relevant to this discussion.
Yeah, but that's going to happen either way, is my point. It's going to
The
happen.
housing couldn't happen without the recreational resort component in Cache County, in the area we're talking about.
actually,
Well,
the great majority of,
Most-
no, the great majority of the development area is already in the RR zone. So, just to be,
In Weber County, right?
no, in Cache County. Yeah, there's a little slice of it. The map goes through a slice of the upper northeastern part of the direction that that development area kind of goes, where the homes and the, will be. So a great majority of it, like if we did,
This would just add 40 units, was that the number?
yes.
Yeah.
Meaning the difference, yeah. It's
To 40?
40 more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think Dirk, or I think it was Dirk, that mentioned that we haven't really come with any additional questions to staff, or you said something, alluded to something to that in.
I really wanted to extend the period of time so that we could get questions that were,
If we aren't going to give specific direction to staff, or direction to, you know, or have some takeaways and things that we would like to do, I don't know if there's really a reason to keep extending this. You know, like, if there's some specific homework that a council member is saying, I would like to do X, and I think that I need the next 2 weeks to do that, I think that's great to identify that in this meeting. But otherwise, I don't know if we have a specific reason to extend or continue this item.
Do I feel emotion coming on?
Well, unless somebody says, I would like 2 weeks to do some project or direct staff to do this project. I don't feel like I need another 2 weeks is what I'm saying. But if somebody else feels like they need that, then I would. But otherwise, yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve ordinance 2025-03, the Powder Mountain rezone.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second that we approve the Powder Mountain rezone ordinance 2025-03. All those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Okay, so it was aye, aye. So the four ayes, the motion passes. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions, too. And please, please stay in touch with Dirk and Angie as we go forward with that master plan, and let's make sure that our questions are answered. Thank you, Brooke, for your patience and for,
Sure, we'll see
Answer
a
your
lot of
questions.
each other in the next few months.
Madam Chair, I want it to be known on my vote that I'm not voting just to make it easier for the staff.
No.
We are voting for this so that we can do the right thing all the way through.
Thank you.
Because
Here, here.
our staff is competent,
Yes.
Yes.
I think, to undertake anything.
Yes.
And we shouldn't belittle them like that, so.
I appreciate that. I agree. Okay, item number 9, initial proposal for consideration of action. Andrew, this one's yours, correct?
So, one sec. All right. So ordinance, sorry, no, excuse me, Resolution 2025-06, changing the Cache County.
Oh, 07. Or no, 06.
Oh, 07, yeah, you're correct.
You're right, it was 06. I'm sorry.
It is 06?
It is 06.
Okay, so Resolution 2025-06 essentially just changes the name of the Cache County countywide policy manual to the Cache County Administrative Code. So just a little bit of background on this. So the Organic Act legally mandates the council to pass a comprehensive administrative code to essentially define and give greater detail to internal county functions. And there's just been a lot of confusion between the Cache County Personnel Policy and Procedure Manual and the countywide policy manual. And I don't think that was ever intentional or anything. It just happened to come up. And Jairus Kendall from the Cache County Attorney's Office, he was reading through the Organic Act and recognized that we didn't correctly name our policy manual. So essentially what this resolution does is it just renames this. It creates a little bit of, a little less confusion, so.
If I could just make one quick comment as well. This is an effort to reduce confusion, improve efficiency in the administration of our government, and, you know, follow our Cache County Constitution, the Organic Act to the letter, and make sure that we're following what it says.
So it doesn't change any of our codes, it just changes the name of that countywide policy
name.
manual?
Yep.
Okay.
I believe that's everything, unless you guys have any questions.
Yeah, does anyone have any questions for Andrew about that, or Taylor? I'd entertain a motion on that one. This is the initial proposal for consideration. We can either continue it or,
I would move that we suspend the rules, pass resolution 2025-06 and changing that name.
it's been moved in
And second.
multiple seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Okay, have you got the next one too, Andrew?
Yep, this is ordinance 2025-06. I mixed them up, I apologize. But, so ordinance 2025-06 is titled amending the membership of the Cache County Audit Committee. So this comes from the Ordinance and Policy Review Committee. Now that we have a separately elected auditor from our county clerk, there was brought up the question, why don't we have our auditor on our audit committee, which you think would be kind of important, but here we are. Anyway, this is just kind of some administrative housekeeping, but it also has some other changes as well. So this proposal would expand the audit committee from 5 to 7 members, just so there wouldn't be any tie votes. It would include a second citizen appointee. There's already one on there, and it would impose strict qualifications on the citizen appointees, requiring them to be CPAs with no recent connections to county employment or potential conflict of interest. The proposal outlines a formal public notice and application process for selecting the citizen appointees, and the proposal defines how the county council members are appointed. And Catherine, I believe you had a motion prepared on this.
Yes, I do, Andrew. Yeah, it looks like we need to just amend some of the
The wording. Yep,
on
after,
it, if we can. So I would just make a motion to amend the wording to say, I move to amend the ordinance 2025-06 to say that the 3 council members of the audit committee shall be appointed by the county executive and confirmed by the county council instead of appointed by the county council, to be in consistent with their Organic Act.
Which one are you on? And we need to clear up the number, because the resolution we just passed, we called 2025-06 when we changed.
is that
It
how
should be
it?
7, I think.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to rename this one, because we passed the original, in 9A, it was called 2025-06, and that's what we passed.
That was the resolution.
Resolution,
That was the
and this is ordinance.
Yes.
Somebody
just-
train the chair,
No, you're fine.
please.
Yeah, you're
So we're
fine.
good.
Hey, I was, it's so easy to
So
confuse.
I'm not making a motion to pass it, I'm just making, I'm amending the verbiage to
Just so-
decide it to comply with the Organic Act. So
Which
the motion is made.
which part of that?
It is,
Where are we at?
I believe it's in the first part of.
Yeah, it's like
The very
second
first part.
yeah, right in A,
I'll second that.
thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we make that amendment to this ordinance. Do I have those that are in favor of that, say aye? Aye. Any opposed to that? Okay, so that amends it. Now,
Discussion.
now we need to discuss it. Okay, does anyone have any questions for Andrew or for Taylor, or?
how did we pick 5 years as the,
That's pretty standard for, to change audit companies. Is that what you're asking?
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's pretty standard in the industry. Currently, I think we're on about year 6 because of some of the changes in our finance department. We just wanted to keep that continuity. But it's something that the audit committee has talked about before and that we would talk about again in the future.
Enough time for them to establish familiarity with our process and finances, but not too much time that maybe they would be
Too
pick up
cozy?
a bias, yeah, or any biases,
Yeah.
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, do I have any discussion about that, or does someone want to make a motion about this ordinance?
I was just gonna add that the Ordinance and Policy Committee met, talked this one over just like the previous one as well, but.
And had some additions to
Hit
this, didn't you?
Hit
Okay.
this pretty hard and came up with some really good
No, I think it looks
suggestions,
really good. I like the
Yeah.
composition of the committee. I think it's really good.
I do
Thanks
too.
for the work you've done on it. I'll move to approve ordinance 2025-06 as amended.
Suspend the rules.
And suspend the rules, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay, that one. Thank you, Andrew, for doing those.
Of course.
Okay, the other business, directing Cache County Council staff to publish notices of vacancy for Cache County drainage districts. Do you want to speak to that, or?
Yeah, so this was kind of brought to me by the executive's office. So legally, technically, the county legislative body is the one that makes the appointments to the drainage districts instead of the executive. And anyway, this is just giving me legal direction by all of you to set a public notice of vacancy on it so that we can fill those seats and they can conduct their business. That's all.
Okay. Does anybody have any discussion about that? I don't think we need to vote on that,
I don't
right?
think
We'll
so.
just go forth and do.
Sounds good.
Where do we have drainage districts?
Yeah.
What's that?
Where do we
Lewiston?
have?
Mostly the north.
Lewiston.
Oh,
We have 4 of the 7 drainage districts in the whole state.
Or in
are in
Lewiston. Wow. Okay. Something we need to learn about, obviously.
Which really, it would be great if that was just one drainage district.
Maybe one, yeah.
Okay. All right, next on our agenda, we wanted to have a discussion about the House bill that's in the legislature right now. It's HB 356. This is a bill that has brought a lot of controversy, a lot of conversations, good conversations. It's been a really learning experience for me, and I wanted to give everyone a chance to publicly say what they think about it so that we as a council can learn from each other and decide what to do next. And so I've asked Andrew to be a timer for us. We're going to limit everyone to 3 minutes. However, if you don't want to say anything, if you're not comfortable speaking, you don't have to feel compelled to speak if you don't want to, or if you only have 30 seconds, that's fine too. But for the sake of brevity, we're going to limit it to 3 minutes. And we're going to go ahead and start with our executive. We'll start down, if that's, I didn't prepare you for that, so I apologize, but we'll start with you. and we'll-
Happy to start, and I hope this fits in
Okay.
3 minutes, but we all took an oath of office when we got elected to defend our Constitution. And our inspired Constitution established a novel concept, a separation of powers with checks and balances. And sometimes I understand it can be tempting to want to consolidate power or make decisions or implement new policies without having to go through the sometimes difficult and time-consuming democratic process. But this isn't the CCP. This isn't the Chinese Communist Party. This is not the Cache Communist Party. The voters of our county were asked if they wanted to implement a separation of powers, and they overwhelmingly voted yes. I would assert that the voters made a good decision. As evidence of the effectiveness of our form of government, I would point to the many high rankings our community has earned on nearly every measure taken, including, probably most pointedly, that we are consistently ranked as the county that most efficiently uses the public's tax dollars, not to mention the many other accomplishments we've achieved in recent years. Nevertheless, if we want to change the way our county is governed, there is an existing process to do so. Having the legislature circumvent or eliminate that process is not the Cache Valley way, it's not the Utah way, and it's not the American way. However, I do agree that our system of government could be improved. In fact, I first proposed that Cache County consider a county manager starting at least 6 years ago. I believe that ensuring that the management of our county is carried out by a qualified individual is critically important. I'm the incumbent in this position. I happen to have a master's in public administration. I earned a credential from the International City and County Management Association. I have almost 3 decades of experience doing this kind of thing. But the same cannot be said for any of the other candidates who've attempted to run for this office. It's concerning to consider that any bozo who wins a popularity contest could end up in this position, Many of our elected offices have minimum qualifications. This one does not. I mentioned the ICMA credential that I earned. ICMA has a code of ethics, and the first tenet of that code says, we believe professional management is essential to effective, efficient, equitable, and democratic local government. I followed that code when I was a member, and I still believe it's a good concept. But again, if we think a change to the form might be valuable, there's a process for making that change. But that process does not include forming a secret combination to strike a backroom deal with legislators to covertly write a bill that removes options for our voters, sneakily pushing it through the legislature in its final weeks. There are some things about this legislation that I could support, but I do not support the dirty politics that were behind it. I could support a form of government that looks something like what is proposed, but I cannot support a process that usurps the will of the voters. If there is a desire to consider changes, I think we should discuss those ideas in an open, transparent, honest, and American way. I know there are some who don't understand the form of government we currently have. There are some who don't realize that we have legislative and executive branches. There are some who don't know that Cache County has a chief executive officer who is an elected official. But we do have an elected executive who is elected at large by all of the voters of the county and who answers to them and only to them. And after having served in that role for the past 4 years, I see the value in having an elected representative who can be a voice for the people, who can advocate on behalf of our county, and who can work with other elected officials as their peer. My preference would be to see a form of government that retains the value of that elected executive, but adds a professional manager with a council. I'd love to see us have more discussion about this, and I think we can make some improvements.
Thank you. Okay, that went a little beyond 3, but we'll try and keep it to 3. Okay, Mark?
I will definitely not use the 3 minutes. So, yeah, I kind of thought I'd frame my comments in the form of just like 4 bullet points. My first issue with just any of this thing is that it was, again, taken straight to the legislature rather than, and asked that the code be amended rather than just following the existing code, which could change, make the very changes we're seeking in the proposed legislation. So I'm in favor of not reaching out to the legislature unless we must, and I felt like there was other avenues in this case. But separation of powers, which was mentioned, is top priority for me in any form of government. You know, the size of the county involved, I think, does make a difference, and that's why we have the classes that the state aligns, and we're right on that edge of third class, second class, and there's, bottom line, I think a county of our population size is better served with separated powers, which then comes down to the next point, which is, I think an area which such population size is better served with an elected executive rather than an appointed manager who is then beholden to maybe some other priorities specified by individuals, you know, so in short, who, when there's disagreement amongst the council, who does the manager serve? And then finally, with the last one is just kind of turning over some of the current authority or responsibility we have as a county to another body of elected officials, but not county elected officials. Was a concern for me as well.
Thanks, Mark. Dave?
I watched this, actually started in Utah County, and then it went around and it kind of bounced around to several other legislators, and then it appeared as 356 by Representative Tucher, and had some language in there that would possibly change this. And I've looked through the whole state, and we are the only one that has of our size, which I think we're still quite small. We're the only one that has a form of government that is that has basically the county council / executive, where all others our county council or hired manager or commissioner. And in talking with a lot of other commissioners and a lot of others, they keep telling me on efficiency for the county, cost savings for the county as to why they're doing that. And I went down to, when it was in committee, I went down there to listen to it. I was not going to speak, but in the process, the chair pointed right to a couple of us that were sitting back there, pointed right to us and said, I want to hear from you guys. So we went up there and I just shared my viewpoint that I don't think it's a bad idea. I think I'd be in favor of a county council manager to increase efficiency and to increase basically cost savings to the county.
Okay, thank you. Catherine?
If you'll humor me, I wrote some down so that I could
I've got a whole
best
page.
present myself. But and I did want to emphasize before I spoke that in directing my words, I wanted to remove all personalities from this. So this is not directed to our current executive or to our council as a whole. I want this just looking at what I feel is the better form of government for the following reasons. And one, I feel that professional management. In the council manager system, the county manager is typically a trained professional, often with a background in public administration or management. This individual is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the government, ensuring that decisions are made based on the expertise and leave political considerations out of the process. In contrast, the council executive system places the executive role in the hands of an elected official who might not have necessary experience or training in public administration. The separation of powers will still exist. Executive roles and duties are still carried out by other elected officials that we have here within the county. The council can focus on setting policies while the managers are in charge of implementation. And this allows the council to focus on policy-making duties. And third, focus on long-term goals. The council manager system, with its emphasis on professional management, tends to focus more on long-term planning and sustainable development, as the manager is often appointed for their expertise in navigating complex issues. This allows for more thoughtful and strategic decision-making. Elected executives driven by election cycles and political pressures may focus more on short-term goals and popular decisions that appeal to voters rather than making difficult but necessary long-term policy choices. The question I feel that I'm most trying to weigh in my mind is right now, in the final 2 weeks, in the urgency of the final 2 weeks of the legislative session, the time to make this decision, or is it best to, in the best interest of serving the people of Cache Valley, can we make this decision in another format? And that's what I would like to listen to my fellow council members tonight about. While I still think it's a superior form of government, I would like to talk about process this evening about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Nolan.
I thought about being quiet, but I can't do that, so. I understand the legislative and I understand the executive. We need that separation, but I don't want one to take power that supersedes what that office should have. I get concerned about that. The one thing that I look at, and I'm always sitting because I live in the unincorporated part of the county, is that they recommended that COG be the part that makes the committee representation if this goes forward. COG is all of your mayors and the executive. Not one representation from the unincorporated part of the county is involved in that, and I think that is a flaw. Because we need to hear from our unincorporated county. That's who I hope we're really working diligently to serve as we do that. The other thing I look at is I've talked to some of the older council members, and I wonder if our duties haven't stepped in and become heavily involved in some of the other things that have been going on in there. For instance, the Board of Equalization. That takes a lot of time. So I'm concerned about a part-time member council fulfilling all of their duties and yet still fulfilling their duties they have as their daytime job and everything else. That's a balance that I want to make sure somebody is looking at and we're looking at. As Catherine mentioned, the manager situation seems intriguing because then, therefore, you get to choose and look at credentials and see what goes inside of there. But my point really goes back to the unincorporated part of the county, that there needs a voice from there. And I want that to happen, and I want to know how far and deep each council member gets involved in everything else, because we are part-time. And yet I don't want people thinking we're not doing our job. I think we're doing our job, but we're also probably really engaged in things that hopefully there could be some help into, if that makes sense. So there's my points.
Keegan?
So the topic of this discussion seems like we're discussing what the best form of government is, but I want to reframe this, because the discussion isn't about the best form of government, because state code, and I'll quote it, 17-52A-405, it allows us to choose our form of government. We have 4 choices. One of is the executive model. One's a 3-member commission, one's an expanded commission that could be 5 to 7 members, and one is a council manager form. 4 choices. What this legislation would do is take one of those choices away from a county of our size, under 175,000. So I talked to a bunch of our state legislators over the weekend, and they're under the impression that the council supports this. So we have the ability tonight to say, no, we don't. We want the power back in our hands. We want to defer this discussion to the appropriate place. I think that's what we should do. I'm happy to discuss the different forms of government, whether we have a council or manager, whether we alter it so one of us is elected at large, so then someone speaks for the whole county that's not the executive. But that discussion does not need to happen in the last 2 weeks. The people decided I actually looked up an old Herald Journal article, and it was 59.4% in 1984 supported this form of government that we've had for the last 40 years. I don't even think it's a question of if we should say that the legislature should continue this. Like, why would we undo that without even seeing what our constituents want? Like, if we're representatives and we're not finding out what they think, who elected our executive and who put this form of government into motion, and we don't even hear from them, like, what are we doing? Like, we're not good representatives. I want to clarify that this only affects 2 counties in our entire state, Summit County and Cache County. And a legislature, Tusher from Salt Lake, is the one putting it forward. Ask yourself why. Why? And why are our legislators under the impression that Cache County supports this? Someone gave them that impression. I'm not going to call anyone out by name, but someone was having conversations. I want to specifically address Dave Erickson's testimony, and I'll quote you so I don't mince words. He said, "We've had just too many experiences in the past few years where we've had just basically go nowhere because of the too much expanded power that an executive might have. We've worked through it, tried to work through it, but we've hit too many roadblocks. A county deserves to have more progression." I'll tell you that trying to work through balance of power does create roadblocks, and it does slow down progressing initiatives. But in my mind, that is a feature of our government, not a bug. Finally, and I think the most important point to emphasize is we could, if we write tonight our state legislators, Casey Snyder, Jason Thompson, Mike Peterson, and tell them we oppose this, it would be dead tomorrow. And so I propose that's what we do, and we defer this discussion to the legislative power that we have later.
Thanks, Keegan. Barbara?
What I would have to say would not be nice, so no comment.
Thank you. Okay, I will finish the discussion. This has been a difficult thing as the chair. It's been, I first of all want to thank every single person at this table that has spoken. I think that you all have the best of intentions, and I think that I have a lot of respect for all of you, and I think that we have the opportunity, hopefully, to speak together and to come to some conclusions. I also want to thank all the people that called me. I've had some interesting conversations from people who weren't very happy with me and weren't very happy with the process, and I appreciate those phone calls, I really do. I hope that the people that I have spoken to still consider me a friend, and because I still feel that way, I was willing to take those conversations. I even initiated some of them and said, tell me what you think, I need to hear it. And so really have tried to do that in all of this. It's been a long week. And I think I wanted to address some of the concerns, and then I'll kind of get to what my conclusion is. You know, there's been a lot of people that say, why is the state having anything to do with this? And I just wanted to reiterate that the state controls all political subdivisions. We as a county couldn't get together and say, hey, let's decide this is how we want to function, and we'll take it to our voters, and if they say yes, that's what we're gonna do. It is all regulated by the state. So the thought that they are involved is not unreasonable. The fact that this is more pointed to us is the sticking point, and I recognize that, but it is, they already put restrictions on 5th and 6th class counties. 5th and 6th class counties cannot even choose certain forms of government. They're limited because of their size, and so in limiting this form of government, the state was using information, or what, I don't know exactly what all the process was, but there is that thought that a county our size doesn't function as well with a council executive form of government. And as far as separation of powers, I think that, to what Councilman Erickson said, if we recognize that 27 out of the 29 counties in the state of Utah have either a commission form where they hold executive and legislative powers, or there is 4 that I believe there's 4 that are a council manager. And in a council manager form of government, it is exactly proscribed in state code, the same way a council executive form is. So in a council manager form, it says clearly that the council manager, that manager has all the duties and functions of an executive except for the veto power. So there is still an executive function where they sign contracts. There are things that only the manager is allowed to do, and they are executive functions. So there is that as well. And there's also the state code is a check and balance on what we do, because we have to work within what the state code says. And really, if you think about it, as a council and as a county, it's a business. It's more like a business. We assess the properties, we collect taxes, we provide the sheriff, we have the prosecutors and the public defenders. Those are not controversial things that need someone to check our power. It's the things we've been asked to do, and I think that, as been evidenced, we've done a good job. We have been frugal, maybe too much so, but of all the counties in the state, we are spending the less per capita as a county to manage those things. Okay, so having said all of that, I still feel like Catherine that a council manager form of government might be the best for us. However, I agree with Keegan as well that we already have a method in place that we can make those changes. And I feel like any of the discussions that we've had about making this change have always involved taking something to voters. And that doesn't mean the voters would want us to, they could choose a commission form. Like this legislation does not pigeonhole us into a council manager form of government. It just says that one form is not working for a county our size and we need to choose another form. And what I am proposing, because it is happening so fast, it was really quick, it's too quick to make those decisions, I would propose, this is just me speaking, my personal opinion, is that we take advantage of the code that currently exists and we immediately form a study committee that we appoint. If we initiate the study committee, Nolan, we appoint that committee. And I can make a promise to you and to voters and anybody here that that committee would be as unbiased as we could possibly make it. And that study committee then take the next year, the whole rest of this next year, and do their due diligence, speak to other counties, hold public hearings, talk about the different, maybe they'll come up with the idea that we should be a 5-member commission or a 7-member commission. Or maybe they talk about the fact that a manager, maybe they come to that conclusion. But whatever they would decide on and make that recommendation, we would then take it to voters in the 2026 general election. But the timing of that, any kind of a transition that we would possibly consider making, timing is going to be an issue. if we did it this way, then in January of 2026, everyone would know what the committee recommended, and people could make decisions based on that recommendation as to whether they want to, what kind of offices they want to file to run for. The vote that would go to voters would not be what kind, it wouldn't be a multiple choice, it would be a yes or no. Do you accept the recommendations of the study committee or do you not? And the one thing that I found most troubling in the bill as it's written is if the voters say no, we automatically revert to a 3-member commission because that is the default in state code. And I would like to see that changed. Representative Dunnigan talked about it. I think that we should still have other options, and we can talk about that. So that's where I have landed after much heartache, headache, prayer. I feel like we don't need to push this through and do it immediately. I still feel very strongly that a different form of government could work better for Cache County. And I feel like we can together keep having these discussions, but I would like to propose the initiating of a study committee here in Cache County to study that. And maybe they come back and say, the council executive is the best forum, this is what you want to do. I think we need to give it more time and have public, and that would allow the public to have input. So that's my opinion. We're not going to vote on this. This is not up for a vote, but it will definitely be further discussion. And I don't know that something like this, I don't know that we'll come to a consensus as a council, but I think we need to have more discussion. It all happened so fast. I sent massive emails to everyone. I'm trying to keep everyone abreast of all the conversations, what I'm thinking, what's been said, but this came up last Tuesday night and it's been a whirlwind. So that's where I'd like to leave that discussion, and I hope that you will all let me know what you think and what we need to do to move forward. I know that at the bottom line is we all want what's best for our county. Like, that's just the bottom line. My kids live here, my grandkids live here. I want to make sure that we are doing the best thing. So that's what I'm hoping for. Now, to finish this meeting on a positive note, we have had on our agenda for 2 months that we would discuss the council goals that we have. So I'd like to take just a few minutes and see if we can do that. And I know that I don't know that everyone was prepared for that. It was on the agenda, but hopefully we'll go ahead and start with you, Mark, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Again, just kind of bullet point style for my thoughts here, but, well, first, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the discussion. Good suggestion. So goals. My priority goals, not in necessarily any particular order, but these are the top 4 or 5. 1, continuing to support with efforts and ensuring that we have what is necessary for the elections office to promote and continue to maintain the highest level of integrity in our elections is a top priority for me. Another top priority for me this year is establish more clarity perhaps on our improve the clarity on our grant programs, the grants that we are, that we are actively engaged in. And another way of saying that, determine where we're dependent on grants and understand what departments are funded specifically that way. Just make that a little more clear is a goal I'd like to work on. Also, and I'd like to work through, and maybe it's out there and I'm not yet aware of it, but have in the county a way or an analysis done for finding the right level of service we want in each department versus the level of service we've enabled by our funding choices. That's basically a budgeting strategy or question. And then also, and this has been kicking around on the O&P agenda for a while, but its top priority for me is to get a purchasing policy in place. We've had a lot of turnover that's caused some postponement of that effort, but we're ready to resume, and like I think that'll move forward pretty quick, but I'd like to make sure we get that in. And then personal goal for me, but relative to this function here, I intend to enhance my study and understanding of constitutional principles, the U.S. Constitution.
Hey, Dave, thank you, Mark.
One of my biggest goals here is to somehow we can help development services give them whatever they need so that they can beef up that department, to streamline some of the services that are being provided, that they can do more with more speed and efficiency some way to help them. They're doing great, but they are limited by, I think, personnel and some processes. So the other thing is getting the fire district, getting that thing solidified and stand alone from the Cache County. I think that's one of the highest priorities I have. I will say that I am extremely ecstatic that we finally have the whistleblower policy passed, which we've been worked on for a long time, which surprised me that it took so long. I'm interested in maybe exploring the possibility of moving GIS to a different department that works better with other departments, where anyway, get some more efficiency there to help them. And I'll stop there. I've got down here, I'd like to also just do what you've said right there, that we explore a better form of government for Cache County. So.
Catherine?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My goals, one of the goals that I had was to, as the Vice Chair, was to have some council bonding, or I don't know if you want to call it that, but tried to organize a dinner, and no, we could not find a night that would work for all of us to go to dinner. And I sent out that little doodle poll, and that was impossible. So we're gonna put that off for a month or two and try again. Maybe when it's better weather and we can do it outside, and that might be fun too. So, sorry, but I did want to, just camaraderie, I think, is important, and I wanted to work on that. So I will continue to work on that. But I think if I could just say one word to underlie my goals, it would be communication. And so communicate with the municipalities in the areas that I represent, those that I represent unincorporated areas, but also those that are incorporated, to work with the city councils and the elected officials there. I try to make it to a council meeting each year in each of those cities, and have close communication with those elected officials, knowing that they can, I can tell them what's happening at the county and relay any needs or anything that they have back to us. And then the communication that I have with the department and the elected officials within the county, so the committees that I'm assigned to. So I've come up with a schedule to meet with them quarterly, and have a schedule planned to keep that communication open with them. And as we're coming up with our new budget schedule, to keep that open so that I can be a resource for them in any way possible. So I think that's just my underlying, if I could just increase communication with all parties involved.
Thanks. Nolan?
John White told me when I come here that I would have fun. That fathead told the story, so no, not really. But anyhow, I want more fun involved, what goes on in things. So I agree with what Catherine said, getting together. I understand we all have differences of opinion. That's the beauty of our government. That's the beauty. But we also can get together and have some fun, and I hope we can find that to do that. I'm also going to say, I think one of the biggest challenges in front of us as a council and a county is our growth. And I think we really need to sit down and work with our planning and zoning group, and also have an understanding of what water is going to mean to us, and how we help our planning and zoning deal with that. Whether we work closely with our state engineer office here or whatever's going on, we all know there's a water study going on. And I sat and watched KSL News today, and southern Utah is 0% of water capacity storage. there's going to be people around this state looking at Cache County saying you got too much and we're going to come have some. So I think as a council, we need to be sitting and making some plans, and that's all part what we do. But I think growth, when I sit and listen to my planning and zoning commissioners, the other thing I'd like to do as a council is we need to thank those who give up of their time in all committees, in all areas, that we really reach out and thank them. And some process where we do that. Now, I know that the Planning Commission gets to go to lunch once a year or something else like that, but there's all of these groups of people that we've not really gone and shook their hand and say, thank you for your time. I mean, we all came through that. I mean, I spent 15 years on planning and zoning, and never once during those times did I have a meeting with the council. So I'm glad that we're doing that, but I think that if we're not watching out for our water and our growth and what we're doing, then we're missing a very big part of what's going on in this county. And I'm not saying stop growth, I'm just saying let's understand what goes in, because our commission sits and deals with RU2s, RU5s, A10s, rezones, and everything else, and it's a tough process to respect property rights, but also understand that there's some limitations on what we can do, and that limitation is going to come down to us in the form of water if we're not careful. So those are just my opinions on that. I still want to reach out to keep in touch with those departments I work with. They do awesome. Every employee in the county is awesome. I don't think I know any of them that have done wrong or intentionally do bad, but we all can improve. I mean, we all know that we sat through a horrible budget process last year, the last 2 years, and we've got to be careful where our budget goes so that when we really say to our citizens, you know, we need more money, that we have done everything in our capacity before we go to them and say we need more money. So those are the things I thought about that caused me concern the last couple of years, is taxes, budget, growth, water, those type of things, and to give thanks to those people who serve. And so I just want to say from here, thanks to all of those who serve, not only in the county, but in municipalities and everywhere. Thanks for the job you do, because it's not easy. And that's why when John told me I'd have fun, I was looking forward to that. So somewhere we got to have some fun. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Nolan. Keegan?
I like fun. I'm glad we're doing this too, because I think the original concept behind it was to have some symmetry with the different departments. They share their goals, we share ours. I like that we're sharing it with each other, because I think that even informs decisions like our form of government. I think if I was on the other end of trying to make a recommendation, I would first want to understand, what are you trying to accomplish as a county? And then does your form of government help accelerate that or get you there? So I have, mostly mine are like small and simple, and I hope they're achievable. But I just want to meet with all the committee heads that I work with in the first 6 months, and I've met with 2 so far, and we're 2 months in, so I'm on track for that goal. Hopefully I can finish it sooner, but I think that's an important part of the communication component. I wrote down, get ahead of the annual budget process, which I think goes hand in hand, just understanding the challenges everyone faces. I've never been in any organization that doesn't have infinite wants and limited resources, so I think that's the nature of government, is trying to prioritize what gets what, and by getting ahead of it, we can better understand that. I would like to discuss at some point entertaining the idea of bringing back the public comment portion at the beginning of meetings. I think it's important to hear from our constituents, and I think it may head off some of the things that are festering with the broader public before they escalate. One of the things we've been discussing, and a lot of people, at least in my district, seem to be interested in, is what's going to happen with the rec center. So I don't even know that we will be able to make a decision on that soon, but one of the goals would just be to acquire all the information requisite to making it that decision. And then I want to get some small wins. I think like the Deep Canyon lot, I think those are tangible things that our community can see and say, hey, they're doing something, and it's something good. So I think just stacking up maybe some of those less grand ambitions and just small things that we can point to. Those are mine.
Thanks, Keegan. Barbara?
Mine are very simple. I'm going to be meeting with my people that I'm liaison with. I do have a concern about serving with, serving on the committee with COG, because I want to make sure that I get that information to the council. And I feel like maybe I'm the enemy going in. And I want to put that aside and let them know I'm just there to help and to get information out, and so that they feel like they're being listened to. I've always wanted to have planning and zoning and have a meeting with them, so I want to be able to have a quarterly meeting at least with them, because if there's an organization or a committee that's not given proper thanks to, it's the Planning and Zoning Committee. I will continue to stand up for the employees of this county. When it comes to budgeting or anything like that, I will look at making sure the employees of this county are taken care of and things are not taken away from them. That will be my vote. But I will also be informed about the budget, but I really want to stand up for the employees of this county. And that's it.
Thanks so much, Barbara. David, I know you had some things you wanted to share with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wrote mine down, so I'll pass them out to you guys. I've organized my goals into 3 main areas. One is to continue improving our administrative processes. The second one is to work on a number of infrastructure projects, infrastructure-related projects, and the third is economic development. I'll just summarize some of these. So under administrative processes, my number one function is to carry out what is passed by this council. So that includes supporting your goals, and I love all the goals that I heard tonight. And in support of that and beyond just the council, I want to continue improving collaboration among our elected officials. Complete the fire district transition, as Councilmember Olson mentioned. We're unified in that. I want to finish the implementation of the GFOA budget standards for our budget. That's the Government Finance Officers Association. We've been working on that for 4 years, and we're really close to being in compliance with those standards. I want us to complete our contract management improvements and, of course, hire a new development services director. Very, very important role in our county. Under infrastructure, I want to finish a couple plans, and some of these have been mentioned, but we have a transportation master plan that's almost done. The rec center plan and the senior center study are out there. I want us to continue looking at ways we can address space here on this campus for our employees. And one thing I'd like us to look at is maybe we can buy the building back here from Department of Workforce Services, if we could shift DMV or extension staff somewhere. I have a ton of airport improvements that I'm working on. Biggest of those is getting a control tower there and also getting USU involved with the airport. We have a bunch of trail projects, as you heard about earlier, that we're working on. We have a master plan for the fairgrounds that says we need more land, bigger land, somewhere to move. So I want to work on identifying that land. We're going to do a plan to identify land this year. Continue to work on our South Valley and our Western corridors, continuing multiple other public works infrastructure projects, supporting the UDOT Main Street project, and finishing a number of open space projects that are out there. We're going to have some really successful projects, hopefully finished soon, and some later this year, hopefully. And then economic development, I feel like our number one economic development priority should be supporting the Utah Festival Opera and Musical Theater. They are a tremendous economic impact on our county, and if they go away, there will be a ripple effect, and it will be very painful for our economy. So I think that should be our number one economic development goal. I'd also like to organize a housing conference this year and continue our efforts to improve housing in our community, and then supporting ag and food producers. They are a really, really important part of our economy. And a piece of that is the ag report that we're working on. So that concludes my list of goals. This isn't all my goals, but the ones I thought you would find interesting this evening.
Thanks, David. Mine are pretty simple as well. I think when Catherine and I took on the role as the chair and vice chair, we talked about how as Catherine said, communication is key. We want to communicate with the people in the valley, and one of the things we talked about, a way to do that is maybe to go on the radio periodically, which scares me to death. Like, that is the hardest thing for me, but I think
Sandy loves it.
I do not. But I think it's important to put our message out there, to be messaging. If we need to raise taxes, or if we want to talk about the rec center, or whatever issues we're dealing with, I think it's important that the people hear from us. And so I'd like to try and do better at that. That's one of my goals. And then also as we communicate with departments, one of the goals that we set was whenever the county has their department head meetings, we're gonna try and get at least one council member to each of those, especially if it's a department they are a liaison with that's presenting at that meeting, that they go and then they can be more familiar with that department. And just to help the employees know that we are aware of them and that we are together as a group, that it takes all of us to be able to manage Cache County. One of my biggest things also is the budget. And to me, that's the most important thing that we do, is take care of taxpayers' money. I don't think there's anything we do that's more important. And as part of that process, we just met today with our auditor and with our finance director to talk about a calendar, and with the executive also, to be able to move forward with a calendar so that we all know like what's expected and what the department heads know what they're expected. And I think it's a process we've been working on. It's gotten better every year, but it still needs some refining. And so that's probably one of my biggest goals, is to help guide us through the budget process in a way that helps us feel like we all understand and that we can make wise decisions about the money that we've been entrusted with. And I think, and my final goal is a new senior center. I know there's a lot of steps that would need to happen before we can have a new senior center, but I think our seniors are some of our most vulnerable population, and it's important to me that we figure out a way to make sure they're taken care of. So that's a personal project of mine. And with that, unless anyone has anything else to say, I think somebody needs to make a motion for the next part of our meeting.
I move to move into executive session pursuant to Utah Code 52-42051D, strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation.
All right.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we move into executive session. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And thank you all for being here.